Hey guys, welcome to Monday Night Live in Lexington, you guys. My name is Catherine Kaufman, and I'm a psychic medium here in Lexington, Kentucky. And today we are continuing our Electric Universe series with Shifu Karega. And
10th one.
Yes, this is the 10th one, 10th episode. If you guys want to see the past episodes, I'll leave a link to the Electric Universe playlist in the comments section after we get done. Now, if you enjoy these broadcasts, go ahead and hit the share button now and share this on your Facebook feed so that all your friends can join in this also. So let's see. The new intros I wanted to present to you guys is the show's purpose is to explore what and who we are on this journey through life. So let me check our connections here. We're doing good. Hey to Melissa Begley. Thanks for joining us this evening. So tell me, what does it matter about dark matter? And
Yeah, so what is our great leap forward? I'm sure most people would agree that whatever system you choose, do it well. And if you're going to choose a scientific method, do it well. Don't do pseudoscience. So a pseudoscience is defined by creating an untestable, unfalsifiable hypothesis, not doing experimental work, writing up papers that are not, they're peer-reviewed, but they're not actually retested. Now, dark matter has been tested. In the case here, it is not yielded anything, and it's cost us billions upon billions of dollars. Now, one of my newest papers, as you know, I released my extended plasma electromagnetic universe.
And we'll leave a link for you guys in the comments.
It's all up on the EU Gateway as usual. But I did a side paper, so it's going to enable me to do lots of papers. I still have to finish the two bigger ones, but I did a small one on investments in Ragnarok. We've spent a ton of money on world-ending media and government programs, mostly government. In this case, though, dark matter is also one of those things where, without any good provocation, we have invested a lot of money. Bear in mind, this was one of those quack theories that came out of the 60s, and it had to do with the misunderstanding of redshift. So both dark energy and dark matter come from a misapplication of redshift. And we've talked about that. We've talked about Halton art before. So people just need to go and look at intrinsic redshift, of course, again, on the Electric Universe Gateway. Okay,
so those of you who are first joining us or you're just finding this broadcast, we will put a link to the EU Gateway on the comments when we get done. This is the EU Gateway. Explain a little bit to those that are just tuning in what that is.
Right, the Electric Universe Gateway is the first version of a learning platform that I created in order to help you guys. Remember that the first episode, one of the big goals was for us to put out a primer. That's how it started, was we created that primer sheet, and we linked it in your original stream. And from there, then I needed a site to embed it on, and then I grew the links. And now there's a research paper section, and you can go and you can do searches. Yes, it's growing. And then, of course, there's a video section. There's great stuff. There's a new video. It's a 4K tour of the moon. Basically, all sorts of work. And I have to give a lot of credit and shout out to Ben Davidson at Suspicious Observers. People do please sign up for his Deeper Look platform so that you can get all the stuff behind the scenes. Now the EU Gateway is completely free. Everything is on it's free. So I just uploaded the Hawkins electrical guides from the early 1900s, and Robert Distenti's old papers. Which, by the way, I'm a Patreon of Robert Distenti. I'm an engineer level Patreon, so I'm having access to his new Vortex algebra paper that he just released over the weekend. So I released papers, he's released papers.
That's pretty good.
There's a lot of stuff, and the community is producing a lot of interesting material. I'm in a dialogue with Lori Garden. She's produced a really interesting paper about change and about when you account for change within the quantum within the equations, with the Planck equations, you get rid of a lot of unexpected quantum weirdness. Basically, the equations start to make sense when you, instead of saying one, you say a cycle. And those cycles then represent something. So this is an interesting paper, and all these are stored on the site, so you can just search. You can search Lori, quantum,
so there's
boom.
a ton of information.
Ton of information on the and I understand it can be overwhelming. The primer is still on there, and also all these videos are on a Start Learning series on there, and in the primer it links to them too. So you know, it's just one of those things where you dive in, and once you dive in, you kind of start to understand where there are some serious issues. Everybody on Instagram.
Hey to you guys on Instagram.
Some serious issues with the gravity. And why don't you do show, and then I'm going to do a demonstration of why dark matter isn't going to work and where is the dark matter. So back to dark matter. So the issues with dark matter are, of course, that it's primarily gravity driven. And that all there's a whole historical context for that. If people are interested in seeing those historical contexts, I recommend either the Space News series or anything with Walt Thornhill. He explains kind of what happened. But remember, this schism happened all the way back at the very beginning of the 1900s. And it is related to the suppression of Tesla's ideas. There's no coincidence there that electromagnetism was like divided, despite it not being divisible, and magnetism was propped up. And bear in mind that Hans Alfvén, in his 1970 Nobel speech, or 77, I can't remember which year, he warned to not use his frozen-end magnetics. They ignored him anyways, in fact, and now they're talking at, you know, Alfvén reconnection. So I want to demonstrate why gravity cannot really hold the solar system together. So it looks like we're going to have to hold this up here. Can you can you hold that there?
Yeah.
All right. So most people know this is a gyroscope.
Make sure you guys can see it.
Right. So if I grab a hold of this, I have the wrong end, and I spin this up nice, and I have some pretty good angular momentum. Now that's going to go for a little bit. You notice the wobble, right? The Earth does that. Now what do we have? Right, so it's still spinning, but it's losing its axis.
Right, it's losing the center of
gravity. The problem is that gravity is a frictional force in a mechanical system, in a Newtonian mechanical system. And it's also in the relativity gravitational system. They have not been able to explain without ignoring the frictional effect. But we know the frictional effect is there because Venus is slowing down, and by the way, Earth's tilt is slowly becoming upright, and Mars is doing the same, but it's a little bit less because it's further out, and its angular momentum is better conserved. And
isn't the moon slowly moving away?
It is slowly moving away.
And
so there are things about gravity that have not worked out. Now, what I want to propose is that dark matter, before we talk about the newest findings, that dark matter, where we're going to find it, we found 50% in the baryons. The other 50% I'm postulating is going to be two things. Hot Jupiters that are as dark as charcoal, and if you go on the EU Gateway and search, they found one. There's one darker than charcoal, which means it's acting as a black body. And there are also going to be stars, rogue gas planets and stars, because it's the same thing. All right, when you get beyond the size of Saturn, we're talking about essentially brown dwarfs that have just turned off electrically, and they're wandering about. They're not in glow mode, right? So the liquid metallic hydrogen lattice, and then the corona is just off. And so when it's off, you can't see it. And so there you go. They've admitted that there are more planets in this galaxy than there are stars.
We just can't see them.
We can't see them.
Now that
we know they must be there. So there's your gravity. There's where all the extra mass in this.
Now that we're connected, let's get some shout-outs done. Hey to Ricky Elkins, Philip Travis, Jacqueline, Chastity, Lori, Zoe, Stephanie, Leanne, Leah Pikes. A special shout-out to Nashville, Sarah Best, and Frank Coughlin, Swena, and Ina Thompson. Thanks for joining us this evening. Sorry about the interruption earlier. I blame Facebook for that.
It's part of the day's energy. So
no,
all right. So now one of the other interesting things that has come out since we did our initial science episode, which was like the third one or so, just second or third.
Yeah.
Is that there is if you go on all the papers I'm referencing, you can either find the citations in my On the Origins of Religions, or directly on the EU Gateway, both of which you can go to the EU Gateway and access.
It's a phenomenal amount of information, you guys, if you really are interested in this subject and you want to know more about it, this is all free information.
Yeah.
All you have to do is click the link and go and read and read and read.
So the galaxy rotation, it's turned out to not be, now the problem with gravity is if you use gravity without dark matter, the galaxy would essentially split apart, and the speed of rotation of the inner planets or the inner stars should be faster.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not what we see. And so not only that,
but that's one of the biggest glitches in the dark matter.
And they haven't even by adding the dark matter, it didn't work in simulation.
Mm-hmm.
And through search in multiple labs, they have been unable to find cold dark matter. And on top of that, they did calculations of how these galaxies are rotating, and take Andromeda or the Milky Way, especially Andromeda, when you spin it, the small dwarf galaxies are also spinning in the same plane. And the dwarfs are in the central axis, and the older objects are further out. Mm-hmm. Again, if you study the intrinsic redshift, this is to be expected. And whether you believe in the liquid metallic hydrogen exfoliation model, where things are pushing outwards, which makes sense in Chinese sciences as well, or the stellar Z-pinch, or some kind of combination of the two, where Markland convection is increasing charge and current, and so that and then something happens and exfoliates either a planet from a gas giant or brown dwarf, mm-hmm. or from a red dwarf, or new quasars from galaxies. Something is being pushed out, and that has to do with the intensity. Pulsars are now no longer, whole stars rotating at 20,000 RPM, which is nonsense. It's not possible. And neutron stars are physically impossible. There's nothing to hold them together. So you take these basically pseudoscience ideas, and they go away.
Calculated.
Right. Well, that all goes away, and you get the Occam's razor effect, which is that everything shrinks to a much simpler paradigm. Mm-hmm. I saw an article. One article said, why there's a fifth nature and force. That's just to keep dark matter working. It still doesn't work. And then another one said there were 10,000 black holes in the center of the Milky Way. Well, which is it? Is it one supermassive black hole that they haven't found, or is it 10,000? And it's total pseudoscience, right? Mm-hmm. So what we need to demand is that money be spent the correct way. And there's some thoughts in Donald Scott's book about that. And so I definitely recommend people read The Electric Sky. Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful book, and the conclusion.
Can they get that on Amazon?
Oh yeah, Donald Scott. Or Stickman on Stone, if you want to support one of the EU-related businesses. Go to stickmanonstone.com, and he has all sorts of EU-related materials. And my school, we just got a whole EU library, so Tai Chi students have access to that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
There are a whole lot of myths that come about because of the schism that happened way, way back. And there was a lot of battle in the 50s and 60s, and there were certain paradigms that were fringe at the time that even the quantum people said, no, this doesn't make any sense, but it just kept going, and no one really stopped it. Even when Feynman said, well, you can't really do magnetohydrodynamics truly without electricity, everybody ignored him, kept going with magnetohydrodynamics. And you go, magnetohydro means water. Mm-hmm. Right, because they're using water dynamics in order to explain magnetic interactions. So you hear these concepts like bubbles and reconnection, and it's all nonsense. When you really study electromagnetism, it's nothing like that. So that's why, I'm a Jurgen Scott kind of electric mm-hmm. And plasma person. I just do not see any cause to believe in magnetic reconnection and things like that. Now, does that mean that there isn't? I just did a video today on what reconnection would look like.
Now, that was a really good video. I watched it, and it explained a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I wish I could show the fields.
I'll put a link in the comments to the YouTube video if you guys want to watch it. Shout out to Melissa, Shelly, Rolando, Trina, Linda, Paul, and thanks you guys for joining me. And Misty Mays, hey girl. Also, if you have any questions for Shifu, please put them in the comments. Yeah. We can see them now because we're definitely on the public view instead of only me.
So let's talk about some of these myths.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
So one of the first ones are that there's no electricity or charge separation in space. Well, first of all, you can go look it up. NASA has a paper about the electrical connection between Enceladus, the moon Enceladus, and Saturn. It's a confirmed. It's a confirmed thing. It's a done deal, right? The South Pole is hot, and it's hot because of electricity. So automatically now you know there has to be charge separation in space, or how could they? Because there's no atmosphere between Saturn and Enceladus. So boom, that hits it right there. And what I love is anytime there's one thing that just knocks it out of the park, any bad theories or props up a great theory. There's another good one, that there's plate tectonics on Mars and Io creating volcanoes. There's no evidence of any plate tectonics at all on Mars. So in the size of Olympus Mons alone, let alone all of the other volcanoes that are there, precludes, because the mass of Mars is too small to generate a shield volcano that size. To put it in comparison, the largest volcano in the history of the Earth that we can tell is still only half as tall as Olympus Mons. It's the same footprint size. It's now gone back down into the Pacific Ocean, and we're talking, 2 or 3 times bigger than Mauna Loa, and many times bigger than Everest. And that's Earth. We have tectonics out the wazoo. So there's no way that Mars has it. When you talk about Io, it's way too small. They call that, tidally generated. That's not what we see with the volcanic plumes on Io. They follow exactly a cathode ray shape. And so those are charged particles that are coming out. Let's see here. All right, so we don't know what's in the core of these planets. We don't know what's in Titan and Europa. These are spectrometer guesses, and then they just say that it's acting. There's no evidence that the composition of the solar system would dictate we should treat the rest of the solar system like we do the Earth. From what we see, the chemistry and overall mechanics, how you treat different bodies, is going to be an independent situation all throughout the entire thing. Case in point, they just released another article, and people can go and look this up, that there was confirmed a lost planet. Okay, so now we all know that's Metis, the goddess who died. She ran into Zeus, and he cheated on Hera with Metis, and then boom, out popped Athena on her own. So did Metis pass through and create the planet Venus? We don't know, but it was definitely recorded. And it's also been recorded that Hephaestus or Adonis or Hoder accidentally killed their brother and was kicked out of the solar system. Well, Triton, the moon, is the only moon in the entire solar system that goes retrograde, right? And so it's going around Neptune in a retrograde fashion. So we can identify which one that is, and it was considered one of the heroic planets, had saved mankind several times. And Balder, right? And Balder is gone. And now we know, and we can see that evidence of it going the wrong direction. Well, they have almost no theory, but they do admit that Triton must have been captured, right? So you can see the cracks on their side is supporting our new cosmology that's emerging. So
I think it's exciting, all the new stuff that's coming out.
Oh yeah. Really, I love that the galaxy, the coplanar rotation. Mars weather. Okay, so the problem with the Mars weather is the atmosphere is too thin. And yet you have these vortices, these dust devils. And on here on Earth, we have a very active atmosphere, nothing like Neptune, Saturn, or Jupiter. However, it's a pretty active atmosphere.
It is pretty active.
And yet you're never going to see a dust devil that is, hundreds of kilometers wide and hundreds of kilometers tall. So why would Mars be able to produce multiple ones of these in a small area? I just watched, just last night, there is on YouTube, if you go search, a volcanic eruption with a pyroclastic flow, and afterwards there's multiple dust devils going along, big ones.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's because it's an electrical effect, and vortices are an electrical effect. And we covered that in previous ones, talking about capacitance and inductance and how the vortices work. But if people want double confirmation, look at what happened last September, and look at the effect of when we had 2X class solar flares, followed up by multiple powering up of these hurricanes till we had 3 hurricanes simultaneously. So we're seeing that. What we do also see with the mysterious cleansing of the Mars rover, right? That's not wind, because if it was wind, the panels would have triangular, basically waveforms that are spaced at harmonic spaces, and there would be signs of where the wind was going. We don't see that. What we see is completely clean. So basically the electric field changes over time. Perhaps one of the moons, one of its asteroid moons go by. I don't know exactly what causes the electric field to change, but basically just charge separation and electrical repulsion, and the dust just lifts right off of the things. I mean, I'm not trying to say that there's no aliens. I'm just saying that black holes and aliens in general are, in the world of science, not a falsifiable hypothesis. So we look for the most reliable hypothesis. And what I think is interesting too is it doesn't take away the mystery. It's still very fascinating to have.
Well, there's just so much we don't even.
There's so much that we don't know, and and I like blowing the minds of people that they've already decided that something, like they've decided Devil's Tower is a giant tree trunk. Well, that's not a bad hypothesis, but let's take a look at it. You can generate Devil's Tower as an anode formation with electric geology.
Yes, you can.
And by the way,
yes,
there's
you can.
go to Stickman on Stone, order Ancient Destructions, Volume 5. In 1491, there's a comet I didn't know about, and it's south of Melbourne, and the Aboriginals witnessed it. They found the crater. There was also an electric airburst. There was a 200-foot tsunami, mega tsunami.
Wow.
The land dropped by 150 feet, and the best part is you get to watch Peter Jupp show you a tree that has been instantly petrified.
Oh,
so
wow.
you can see the stone and the living, the once living flesh of the tree. The what do they call it? The rhizome.
Yes.
Right there in the stone. So you can see both rock and the
kind of
growing.
biblical, isn't it?
It's a little bit, yeah. It's kind of
stone, just
yeah,
like that.
and that's what the Aboriginals said happened. They said that
wow.
and the Koreans agreed that this comet came along in 1491, split in half, and one part of it hit the water, creating a mega tsunami. The other part air bursted and electricity went everywhere.
Wow.
This agrees with our King Arthur comet as it went by, and also, by the way, the Sodom Gomorrah. I don't know if people know about the Sodom Gomorrah comet, but there is a documentary on YouTube that you can watch, and it passed over. The Sumerians actually have a clay tablet record of this, passed over and ended up hitting a mountain in the Swiss Alps somewhere.
Wow.
And sheared the top right off the mountain.
That is so cool.
So the electrical backdraft of that burned that up. And so you think of Tunguska, but it would have been a lot bigger. Which, by the way, did you know that we got buzzed again yesterday?
No.
That's 2 buzzes in a week and a half.
Tell everybody what you're talking about.
So, and again, if you go to the EU Gateway, one of the newest links is there's a JPL website, and you can look at the pathway of these asteroids as they go. And this is the second one. This one was 40% resistance from here to the moon. It was a little north of us, like a little bit above the plane, but it was closer than the one a week and a half ago. It was only a truck size.
Oh, okay.
But the last one was about a football field. So it would have been kind of a bad day. They're coming from the similar angle. We are debating on suspicious observers. Everybody's going back and forth. You know, I'm looking at Yellowstone. I don't see electrical formations in Yellowstone. I do see it at Black Hills and Devil's Tower.
Yes,
Devil's Tower, Yellowstone.
Definitely.
That doesn't mean, though, because we talked about crustal expansion, that if a celestial body was going by, an electric current could have formed, and basically the convection could have heated up and made Yellowstone more active in the past, and it could become more active in the future.
Well,
I don't see it because it's constantly venting.
Was that episode 6 or 7?
That was the Atlantis episode. Yeah.
Atlantis.
Yeah, so if people want to review that.
Hey to Catherine, Jennifer, Kathy, Kara, and Teresa.
So another one is the plate tectonics. Now, I am into plate tectonics, but I am also into the expanding Earth. There's a lot of good evidence for the expanding Earth, and they don't preclude each other, right? You could have one plate moving faster than the expansion. You could have another plate moving slower. 2 papers were released, and they're on the EU Gateway once again, where the actual plate directions have changed. In some cases, by a full 90 degrees.
Oh my!
So the South American plate, for example,
that's unheard of.
The South American plate was moving this way because the Pacific Rift is here. The Pacific Rift grows faster than the Atlantic Rift. So the South American plate was pushing this way, and now it's going this way, based on newest measurements.
That's
these
crazy.
are 2 different papers. They're really fascinating papers. I definitely recommend people look into those. So the idea that crustal displacement's impossible. Remember, there was a guy that proposed that about Atlantis, and he and his wife were kind of laughed out of the building that Antarctica went down to the south. Actually, quite possible. And if things can slide, remember these are thin peels that can easily slide right over top of each other.
That's fascinating.
Next one.
Okay.
Microlensing. So when you talk about the black hole theorists, they say, well, we have found a black hole at the center of the Milky Way because, and we know because of microlensing. There's never been, and this is an interesting thing, you go find Mr. Dowdy, D-O-W-D-Y-E. He was a NASA scientist. He's retired now. And he admits that they have never found microlensing at say, a radius of 2. They always find that the microlensing is always within the plasma sphere, which we've talked about. Plasma is electromagnetic, light is electromagnetic, it's refraction.
Right.
So microlensing falls right flat on its face. We have a question: how did Mars' atmosphere get so thin? So according to the ancients, there were 3 different attacks or matings, depending on culture. Sometimes Venus and Mars were mating. Sometimes he was suckling on her as mother and child. And then according to the Greeks, they were warriors. They were battling, and Ares could never best her. And he was left with a scar on his face. And some cultures interpreted that it's different. Some of them, he saved mankind. However, it does appear that the reason that Venus's atmosphere is so dense is because a lot of it was taken from Mars. But it appears that Earth got most of the ice and water, and I'm speculating that the desert belt mostly came from Mars. I don't have any proof yet. I did look at some of the mineral geology. It is possible that water and interactions of weather could have changed that. We do know this: the Sahara had 3 lakes bigger than Lake Superior in it, only 10 to 12,000 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get 1,000 to 1,500 to 2,000 feet of sand from topsoil.
No.
Right? We can wear our topsoil out. We're doing a good job of that here in America. And yet we don't have any 1,000-foot sand dunes. So the question is, where did all that sand come from? And look at Saudi Arabia. Look at the Tectonics Desert. They look fresh. Now, the one in the case of the Tectonics, we know that the crust was lifted and it was tilted out. The Chinese have very not reliable, what would be believable, because there's no reason to lie,
right,
myth about the flooding that came from that. And the Saudi Arabian desert just looks very fresh, and on top of that, there's a lot of oil. And based on what we know about the hydrocarbons coming from Venus's atmosphere, it does look that most of that oil in that area, why it's such a concentration, where there are extra dinosaurs or something, and it looks like it was dumped mostly there. And so the ambrosia was mostly from India to Egypt kind of phenomena, and that's why most of the oil is there. Obviously, the Earth has produced some oil. I think the Earth actually does produce hydrocarbons interiorly as part of an interaction between the radiation and, we've talked about the grapevine kind of effect, but the radiation and the heavy water producing some kind of effect.
With
deep inside the Earth that we don't understand.
Tectonic shifts, though, maybe the water supplies were diverted to a different.
Oh, it's totally possible, and almost assuredly everything has changed. I do believe that Sumeria dried up, but and Babylon and Akkad and Uruk, but I don't believe that they turned into conically shaped dust mounds by pure erosion, because we see conical shape strikes in the southwest of the United States where there's bigger lightning. For some reason, there's more charge in the southwest of the United States.
It's an electrical
charge. There are several electrical, aside from the Grand Canyon, several electrical discharge locations, and they have lightning strikes that make conical mounds that look like ants, and that's credit to Andrew Hall. If people want to again, if you go to the EU Gateway, you look up Andrew Hall, you can watch his stuff about harmonic resonation. You can see the triangle-shaped mountains, and he explains the waveforms and how those are created. And he's the guy who's talking mostly about these conical-shaped hills. And he also explains conical mounds of the mountain people around the world, right? It's not just the Hopewell. Right, so cold dark matter continues to limp on. We're speculating.
When do you think they'll give that up?
They won't, because what they're doing, you can go onto the EU Gateway and search for direct measurement. They are measuring electricity going in and out of black holes now, and they're postulating huge. The numbers are fantastical. I mean, the size of the currents, the electrical currents. Of course, we know they're black holes. And there's another one called JPL and coaxial cable. Search that. So you see counter-rotating cylinders from NASA now. So Donald Scott, of course, immediately jumped on that, because that's his paper, that's his baby, right? That they degrade by the square root of r, and he called him out on one of the journals. I forget which one, probably the Journal of Cosmology. And we'll see how they respond. they're admitting that there has to be some type of current in order to have magnetism. And when you read the Hawkins electrical guide, the intro chapter, it makes it pretty clear. They are one force.
Mm-hmm.
There's not two things. You can't have magnetism without electricity. It is one thing. We call it electromagnetism because they were discovered separately, but they actually are just one thing.
Exactly.
They're 90 degrees out of phase with each other,
mm-hmm.
and that's all there is to that.
Yeah.
So that leads us up to the oh yeah, there's a new Magellanic Galaxy that they've discovered between the two, the small and large Magellanic. Guess what? It rotates in a way that violates cold dark matter. Yeah.
Oh, so you won't see
those.
that getting a lot of press, will you?
No, probably not. So this leads us back to our electric the liquid metallic hydrogen model of the sun. So I produced a video about the problems with robotized paper. However, he has me convinced in a lot of ways. The first, he is using spectroscopy. He is using, and this is a guy who helped make MRI possible. So, mm-hmm. folks, he's the real deal. He's at Ohio State University, and he runs Sky Scholar, which I definitely recommend people to subscribe to. Sky Scholar is a great channel. It is heavy, even for me. It's like, whoa, this is a lot. But he has some experiments that clearly show the problems with Kirchhoff's law and Planck's law, and mm-hmm. and so when we look at his theory of liquid and his brother, the theory of liquid metallic hydrogen surface, it makes sense. You have a ball of hydrogen. We've seen in space that when you spin these things up, the heavier things go to the outside. You need a real surface. Mm-hmm. It probably needs to be in a kind of a fluid form. But I think the problem is he, for some reason, thinks that means that there's no gaseous plasma. I don't agree with that. I think there's great evidence that there's gaseous plasma. There's also definitely electric field because the particles are accelerating away. And remember, the biggest event that we know of, they went 50% the speed of light not that long ago. And another thing, liquid metallic hydrogen without electricity would not explain the transistor effect of the solar wind turning off in 1999 for 2 days. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a transistor effect. That's a Jurgen-Scott circuit model, okay? And so what he's missing, in my estimation, and I did the whole video showing this, is that when you boil a fluid, and we're using water because this is Earth. Right. When we boil water, yes, the gas is escaping. Without an electric field, there's nothing to accelerate it anymore, but it comes out fast. However, if you have like a bigger, deeper pot, the boiling is less intense. Why? Because the gas is also pushing back down. Mm-hmm. So my posture, if I had to modify his theory a little bit, is that there is a gaseous plasma inside, and the convections are electromagnetic currents, mm-hmm. Or what Distinti is calling ether currents. Yes. And then there's a compression here and a compression here, just as we see in cells with bilipid phospholayers. And this compression holds it together. And there's some there's some hydrophilia in terms of hydrogens like to bond to each other. Mm-hmm. And they're forming a lattice like a crystal, mm-hmm. But it's a fluid crystal. That's the hard part about understanding this. It's a fluid crystal that acts as a black body. Yes. And we see water can act. They've got nuclear video. When a bomb goes off, a black wave coming out from the center, from the shock wave. Water can act as a black body. And then the outside also, where it's evaporating into a plasma, and the charge is distributing the same way that we see with the Sapphire project, mm-hmm. another pressure pushing down, and that's keeping the real surface of the sun. So I agree with him. There's a real surface. There's not really much evidence for a gas ball, mm-hmm. and in space, gas isn't held together. There's certainly no cause to believe that if you had a diffuse amount of gas, it would keep spreading out. There would never be enough gravity to pull it together. Accretion has totally failed. They've never been able to make it work. They can't even make the big whack of the moon work, and we'll get to that. So you've got to have something to congeal it together, and that is electromagnetism. Electromagnetism is the glue that holds it all together, mm-hmm. and Henri Poincaré knew it, and Einstein's wife knew it, and then Einstein saw his wife was onto something, and he said, That'll be my, I'll get famous.
She has something.
However, it was Henri Poincaré who first postulated gravity waves.
Yeah.
And he was the one who came up with who first made E equals MC squared a big deal in the academic circle.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, he didn't get the fame and fortune. However, he was right. And now, you know, a century later, we have the chance to listen to Alphen, to listen to Hans Christian Birkeland, who was the guy who discovered the auroras were electric, and to look at the myths, look at the Bible, and look at the Aboriginal dream time, and look at the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Going
on since the beginning of recorded history.
Yes,
so.
And they knew it. We talked about the Giza power plant, and Chris Dunn is doing fantastic work with Eric Wilson, and I have no doubt that we are going to discover some really interesting things. If people haven't checked out Ancient Architects channel, he has a good channel too. I'm not into the water pump only theory of the power plant or the pyramid, but I do think it is a part. And we're going to figure this thing out, and whether or not, you know, Zahi Hawass lets it all out is going to be another.
That, you know, he doesn't have to, but
he doesn't have to.
He should. Now we are at the end of our time. We've gone over a little bit, but that's okay. I want to encourage all of you guys to visit the EU Gateway and read some of this stuff and expand a little bit of your minds on some different thought about things. I do want to shout out to some of the last people that joined on: Brenda, Kim, Jen. A special shout out to George, Roger, and Mary. Thanks for joining us this evening.
And please check out my new paper on the origins of religions and the investments in Ragnarok, which is short.
A really good read. You guys have got
mind blowing, I think.
Check it out.
Even my mind, I was like, I couldn't believe the stuff I was finding.
I know.
I could not believe the stuff I was finding for this paper.
So I want you to hit the share button, share this with your friends.
Please.
If you want to see the past episodes, I will put a link to my YouTube channel in the comments section. All you have to do is click the link and go to the playlist. I put a playlist of all of our past episodes on there. So it'll be the Electric Universe series playlist. Mark subscribe on the YouTube channel, and if you want to follow these Monday night live episode shows, hit see first on notifications on both of my pages. Again, I want to thank Shifu for coming out.
Oh, no problem. You know,
this is an ongoing series. We will have another episode.
I forgot to mention, in Berea tomorrow, the university's asked me to speak about Chinese medicine and Chinese. Yeah, so tomorrow, if you're in Berea, it's like 10 a.m. Look it up on their events site. Yeah, I'm speaking down there.
Okay, so where do they go?
I guess the Berea.edu. I don't know. I don't remember the. Not tomorrow. I'm sorry. Wednesday.
Okay, put the link on there.
Yeah, I'll have to. Yeah.
So we'll get you a link if you want to. That would be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's all about the hidden technologies in the Chinese character concepts.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I might have to make a trip to Berea. Thanks for joining us tonight. I will see you next Monday night. Kisses from Kentucky, and don't forget, we are exploring what and who we are on this journey through life. Later.